In 1974, he was television's rising star, America's favorite all-American boy. But then, Fonzie happened. What was supposed to be a side character turned into a cultural phenomenon, stealing the spotlight and setting off a behind-the-scenes battle that would change TV history. A brutal power shift, friendships tested, and a fight for creative control that nearly tore the show apart. The original star pushed aside, storylines rewritten, and tensions that ran deeper than anyone knew. What really happened on the set of Happy Days? How did Henry Winkler go from an unknown actor to one of the most beloved TV icons? And why did Ron Howard, the show's original lead, walk away at the height of its success? This is the untold story of Happy Days: fame, rivalry, redemption, and the real cost of becoming a legend. Henry Winkler was born in 1945 in Manhattan, the son of German Jewish immigrants who had fled Nazi Germany just years before. His father built a successful business, ensuring financial stability, but at home, discipline was strict, expectations were high, and love often felt conditional. For young Henry, school was a battlefield. Reading was nearly impossible. Words swam on the page, and no matter how hard he tried, teachers dismissed him as lazy and unmotivated. His parents, shaped by their own hardships, pushed him relentlessly, convinced that if he just applied himself, he would succeed. They called him a dumb dog in German, a name that would haunt him for years. But no one knew the real reason behind his struggles: dyslexia, a condition that wouldn't be diagnosed until decades later. Then, at 13, everything changed. He saw West Side Story, and something inside him ignited. The rhythm, the emotion, the storytelling, it all felt electric. In that moment, Henry knew. Acting wasn't just something he wanted to do. It was something he had to do. But his parents had other plans. Success, in their eyes, meant a stable career: medicine, law, or the family business. Acting was a foolish dream. Still, Henry refused to let go. He found his way into school plays, performing whenever he could. When it came time for college, he defied his parents' wishes and enrolled at Emerson College in Boston. But school was still a struggle. Words didn't come easily, and reading scripts felt like climbing a mountain. Yet, in the theater, something clicked. He could feel the lines, even if he couldn't read them perfectly. Encouraged by professors who saw his raw talent, Henry pushed forward, relying on memorization and instinct. After Emerson, he took an even bolder step: Yale School of Drama, one of the most prestigious acting programs in the world. It was a place where only the best survived. At Yale, Henry found himself surrounded by brilliant actors, but he refused to be intimidated. He worked harder than ever, finding ways to adapt, learning how to disguise his difficulties. He acted in Shakespearean plays, modern dramas, anything that would help him grow. By the time he graduated, he was ready to take on Hollywood. But Hollywood wasn't ready for him. Like so many young actors, Henry arrived in New York with dreams of stardom but no real way to break in. Casting directors didn't see a future leading man. They saw an average-looking guy with an awkward presence. Work was scarce, and money was even scarcer. To survive, Henry took whatever he could get: small theater roles, odd jobs, and commercials. Lots of commercials. In a single year, he appeared in 42 different ads, selling everything from hamburgers to deodorant. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and taught him how to command a camera. Then, in 1973, his luck changed. He landed a small part in The Lords of Flatbush, a low-budget film about a group of Brooklyn greasers. Among the cast was a young, unknown actor named Sylvester Stallone. The movie didn't make waves, but it put Henry on a film set for the first time, giving him a taste of what he had worked so hard for. He was hungry for more. And then, the opportunity of a lifetime came knocking. A new television show was in development, a nostalgic sitcom set in the 1950s called Happy Days. It centered around a clean-cut teenager named Richie Cunningham, played by Ron Howard, already famous from The Andy Griffith Show. The show needed a small supporting role, a local tough guy named Arthur Fonzarelli. Henry auditioned, but at 28, he wasn't exactly what the producers had in mind. They were looking for a tall, imposing figure, someone who could command attention just by walking into a room. Henry, at just 5 feet 6 inches, didn't fit the bill. But what he lacked in size, he made up for in presence. In his audition, Henry delivered something the producers hadn't expected: charm. He made Fonzie cool but approachable, tough but likable. The moment that sealed it? An improvised mirror scene. He walked up to the mirror, ready to fix his hair, then stopped. With a simple glance at his own reflection, he smirked and gestured as if to say, "I don't even need to fix it." The room erupted in laughter. In that moment, Henry Winkler became the Fonz. The producers knew they had found something special. He got the role. But what came next, no one saw coming. Arthur Fonzarelli was never supposed to be a major character, but Henry brought something to the role that captivated audiences. The leather jacket, the signature A, the effortless cool. It was magnetic. Soon, something started happening. Fonzie, the side character, was stealing every scene he was in. And the audience? They couldn't get enough of him. But this was Happy Days, not Fonzie's days. The show already had a leading man, Ron Howard. And as Fonzie's popularity grew, tensions started to build. What started as a beloved ensemble cast was quickly turning into a one-man show. Henry Winkler was becoming a superstar, but his success came at a price. And for Ron Howard, the original face of Happy Days, it was a price he wasn't willing to pay. When Happy Days premiered in 1974, it was meant to be a wholesome, nostalgic look back at 1950s America. A simpler time centered around the life of Richie Cunningham, played by Ron Howard. Richie was the all-American teenager, the heart of the show, with his loyal friends and supportive family, creating a world that felt safe and familiar. But in the background, there was another character, a local tough guy, Arthur Fonzie Fonzarelli. He wasn't meant to be a big part of the story. In fact, in the first season, he only appeared in 16 out of 24 episodes, often in quick, throwaway scenes. He was there to add a little edge to the show, a contrast to Richie's clean-cut image. But the audience saw something the network didn't. From the moment he stepped on screen, Henry Winkler's portrayal of Fonzie was electric. He had a presence that was impossible to ignore, a mix of toughness and warmth that made him more than just a stereotypical greaser. He wasn't just a rebel, he was a character with depth, and audiences loved him. As the show gained popularity, something unexpected happened. Fonzie, a minor side character, became the reason people tuned in. Fans weren't just enjoying his scenes, they were waiting for them. His signature move, hitting the jukebox to make it play, his effortless confidence, his now iconic "I," all of it made him stand out. He wasn't just a bad boy in a leather jacket. He was cool in a way that felt effortless, a guy who could get anything he wanted but still had a heart. The network, however, was skeptical. ABC executives weren't convinced that Fonzie's greaser look fit the clean-cut, family-friendly image they wanted for Happy Days. In a move that now seems ridiculous, they banned him from wearing a leather jacket, worried that it would make him look too much like a delinquent. Instead, they gave him a green windbreaker, an awkward choice that made him look more like a gym teacher than the king of cool. But Henry Winkler knew that wasn't Fonzie. So the writers found a loophole. ABC had one exception to their rule. Fonzie could wear a leather jacket only if he was near his motorcycle, because then it was considered safety gear rather than a fashion statement. The solution? Keep Fonzie's motorcycle in every scene, even when it didn't make sense. Indoors, outdoors, in the middle of a diner, it didn't matter. If Fonzie was there, the bike was too. Eventually, the executives gave in. By the second season, the green windbreaker was gone, and Fonzie's black leather jacket became a permanent part of TV history. And that wasn't the only thing that changed. As Fonzie's popularity exploded, the entire direction of Happy Days began to shift. Ratings soared whenever he was on screen. Merchandise sales skyrocketed. T-shirts, posters, lunchboxes, anything with Fonzie's face on it was selling faster than ABC could produce it. The network, realizing what they had, pushed Fonzie even more. His screen time increased. His character became more central to the stories. By season 2, Fonzie was no longer a background character. He was the show's main attraction. And it wasn't just in America. Fonzie fever spread worldwide. In 1977, a poll found that he was more popular than the Emperor of Japan. Politicians name-dropped him, hoping to seem relatable to voters. Kids idolized him, copying his catchphrases, his slicked-back hair, his effortless confidence. Henry Winkler had gone from a struggling actor to one of the most famous faces in television. But while Fonzie's star kept rising, something else was happening behind the scenes. Happy Days wasn't just a sitcom anymore, it was a power struggle. The show had started as a coming-of-age story about Richie Cunningham, but now the dynamic was shifting. Ron Howard, the original lead, was being pushed into the background. What was supposed to be a family ensemble was now the Fonzie show, and not everyone was happy about it. ABC had found their golden ticket, and they were cashing in. But in the process, they were changing the show's very foundation and setting the stage for tensions that would threaten to tear the cast apart. And for Ron Howard, the man who had once been the face of Happy Days, this was just the beginning of a battle he never expected to fight. By season 3 of Happy Days, something was undeniable. Fonzie wasn't just a popular character, he was the character. The audience didn't just love him, they were obsessed with him. Ratings soared whenever he was on screen. Fans waited for his next catchphrase, his next smooth move, his next effortless display of cool. The show had started as a story about Richie Cunningham, but by 1976, Fonzie was the main attraction, and everyone knew it. ABC executives saw an opportunity they couldn't resist. In 1978, they made a shocking proposal. Happy Days should be renamed Fonzie's Happy Days. To them, it made perfect sense. Fonzie was driving the ratings, selling the merchandise, and shaping the show's entire identity. But to the cast, especially Ron Howard, it was an insult. He had been the face of Happy Days from the beginning. The story was supposed to be about Richie Cunningham and his world. Now, it felt like he was being pushed out of his own show. Henry Winkler, despite benefiting the most from Fonzie's rise, wasn't on board with ABC's idea. He saw what was happening, how the show was shifting, how tensions were rising. He knew that without Ron Howard and the original ensemble, there was no Happy Days. Winkler stood up to the network and refused to let the name be changed. He knew it wasn't fair. But even with the title staying the same, the power shift was impossible to ignore. Ron Howard tried to push through, remaining professional. But behind the scenes, resentment was growing. He felt sidelined, no longer the show's true lead. Worse, The network executives treated him differently, as if his role barely mattered anymore. In meetings, at events, even on set, everything revolved around Fonzie. Eventually, Howard had enough. He let the producers know that if things didn't change, he was ready to walk away. The tension wasn't just between the network and Howard, it spread to the entire cast. Anson Williams, who played Potsy, felt that his comedic moments were being overshadowed by Fonzie's ever-growing presence. In 1978, he accused Winkler of stealing a punchline during a live taping. Their once friendly dynamic turned cold, and they barely spoke off-camera for nearly 2 decades. Tom Bosley, the actor behind Howard Cunningham, also voiced his frustration. He had signed on for a family-centered sitcom, but now it felt like a one-man show. He confronted Winkler directly, saying, "You know this isn't just about you, right?" While Winkler tried to reassure him that he hadn't asked for all this attention, the resentment never fully disappeared. Even behind the camera, ABC was relentless in their Fonzie-first approach. Marketing materials focused solely on Winkler. Merchandise was designed around Fonzie. The character's fan mail outnumbered every other cast members combined. The network knew what audiences wanted, and they weren't interested in anything else. For Ron Howard, this was the final straw. He had spent years being the good soldier, playing the role that made him famous, but he knew his future wasn't in front of the camera. It was behind it. He had already started directing small projects, and he realized that if he wanted to be taken seriously as a filmmaker, he had to step away from Happy Days completely. In 1980, Ron Howard made it official. He was leaving the show. The writers crafted a send-off. Richie Cunningham would move away to join the Army, saying goodbye to Milwaukee and the world of Happy Days. His final episode aired on May 6, 1980. The night before the episode aired, Howard and Winkler had a private conversation. No cameras, no script, just 2 actors who had started as co-stars and ended up caught in the middle of a TV industry war. Howard told Winkler that he didn't blame him for any of it. He knew that Winkler never asked for this to happen. But at the same time, he had to leave. He needed to prove to the world, and to himself, that he could do more than just play Richie Cunningham. Howard's departure shook the Happy Days set. It marked the end of an era, the close of the show's original dynamic. Happy Days would continue for 4 more seasons without him, but it was never quite the same. The power struggle that had played out behind the scenes had reached its breaking point. For Henry Winkler, this was a bittersweet victory. He was the biggest star on television, but at what cost? The balance that had made Happy Days great had been shattered. And though he had won the spotlight, he was about to face a struggle of his own, one that would nearly end his career. By the time Happy Days ended in 1984, Henry Winkler was one of the most recognizable faces on television. He had spent a decade as Fonzie, a character so iconic that it became more than just a role. It became an identity. But that identity soon became a prison. The same thing that had made him famous was now holding him back. Hollywood saw him as Fonzie, and only Fonzie. Casting directors couldn't picture him in anything else. They didn't see an actor capable of transformation. They saw a type, a greaser in a leather jacket, with a signature catchphrase. He auditioned, he tried out for new roles, but the answer was always the same. "We love you, Henry, but you're just too Fonzie." One of his biggest regrets came in 1977, when he was offered the lead role in Grease. Danny Zuko, the leather-clad, smooth-talking heartthrob, seemed like the perfect fit. But Winkler hesitated. He feared playing another 1950s bad boy would cement his fate forever, locking him into a character he'd never escape. So he turned it down. The role went to a young, up-and-coming actor named John Travolta. Grease became a box office sensation, and Travolta became a global superstar. Meanwhile, Winkler watched from the sidelines, questioning whether he had made the right decision. He later joked, "I went home and had orange juice." Travolta went home and bought a plane. As the years went by, the calls slowed down. Winkler, once the face of primetime television, was now struggling just to get auditions. Directors worried audiences wouldn't see his new characters. They would only see the Fonz. The very thing that had made him famous was now shutting doors in his face. But Henry Winkler wasn't about to fade away. If Hollywood wouldn't let him be a leading man, he would find another way to stay in the business he loved. He made a bold decision to step behind the camera instead of in front of it. His first attempt at directing came in 1988 with Memories of Me, a heartfelt comedy drama starring Billy Crystal. The film wasn't a massive hit, but it proved something important. Winkler had talent beyond acting. He had an eye for storytelling, an instinct for character development. It was a new beginning, one that allowed him to escape the shadow of Fonzie. Then came another opportunity. In 1993, he directed Cop and a Half, a family-friendly action comedy starring Burt Reynolds. Again, it wasn't a blockbuster, but it was another step away from typecasting. But his biggest success wasn't as a director, it was as a producer. In 1985, he co-created a new action series for television, a show about a man who could solve any problem with nothing but his intelligence, a Swiss Army knife, and whatever was lying around. That show was MacGyver. It became one of the most popular TV series of the 1980s, running for 7 seasons and turning Richard Dean Anderson into a household name. More importantly, it proved that Winkler didn't need to be on screen to make an impact. He had found a new role in Hollywood, one where he wasn't defined by a leather jacket or a catchphrase. But even as he built a new career, the ghost of Fonzie never really left him. And for years, he wondered if he would ever be known for anything else. For years, Henry Winkler had been searching for a way back into the industry that had defined his life, back into a career where he could finally be seen as something other than Fonzie. It wasn't easy, but after decades of being typecast, he got an opportunity that changed everything. In 2003, he landed a role in a quirky, offbeat comedy called Arrested Development. The show had a sharp, absurd sense of humor, nothing like the traditional sitcoms Winkler had been part of. He played Barry Zuckerkorn, a hilariously incompetent lawyer who somehow kept his job despite his complete lack of legal skill. It was his first major comedic role in years, and it showed a different side of Henry Winkler. But the moment that truly marked his comeback was a joke that poked fun at the very thing that had once haunted him. In one episode, Barry Zuckerkorn jumps over a shark, a direct reference to Happy Days' infamous jumping the shark scene. The moment Fonzie literally leaped over a shark on water skis, symbolizing when the show lost its magic. Instead of running from it, Winkler embraced it. He was in on the joke, and fans loved it. From that moment on, something shifted. He was no longer just the Fonz. He was Henry Winkler, a talented actor who could laugh at himself and evolve with the times. But his true career renaissance came in 2018, when he took on the role of Gene Cousineau, a washed-up but well-meaning acting coach in HBO's Barry. The show was dark, complex, and unlike anything he had done before. Winkler brought heart, humor, and emotional depth to the role, proving that even after decades in the industry, he was still capable of surprising people. And then, at 72 years old, it finally happened. Henry Winkler won his first Emmy Award for Best Supporting Actor. It had been 42 years since he was first nominated for Happy Days, and now he was finally being recognized for his talent, not as Fonzie, but as himself. When he took the stage to accept the award, he delivered a heartfelt message. If you stay long enough at the table, the chips will come to you. But Henry Winkler's legacy isn't just about Hollywood. His greatest personal victory came in 1977, when he finally got an answer to a question that had haunted him since childhood. Why had school been so difficult for him? Why had reading felt impossible? The answer came when he and his wife took her son to a specialist. His stepson was struggling in school, just like Winkler had. The doctor's diagnosis? Dyslexia. As the doctor described the symptoms, Winkler felt a chill go through him. Everything fit. The years of frustration, the belief that he was lazy or not smart enough. It was never about effort. His brain had simply worked differently. He had dyslexia, too. It was a moment of relief, but also of anger. For years, he had been told he just wasn't trying hard enough. He had been humiliated by teachers, scolded by his parents, left to struggle without support. Now, finally, he had a name for what he had been fighting all along. Instead of letting it define him, Winkler turned his diagnosis into a mission. He became a passionate advocate for children with learning disabilities, speaking in schools across the country. He wanted kids to know what he never did. They weren't stupid, they weren't lazy, and they weren't alone. Then, in 2003, he did something even more unexpected. He became a children's book author. Working with writer Lynn Oliver, he created Hank Zipzer, a series about a funny, determined kid with dyslexia. The books became an instant hit, selling millions of copies and being translated into multiple languages. They even inspired a TV adaptation in the UK. Through his books, his advocacy, and his personal journey, Henry Winkler has spoken to over 250,000 students about overcoming obstacles. He teaches them what he learned the hard way. Your struggles do not define you. What you do with them does. For decades, Henry Winkler fought to escape the shadow of Fonzie. But in the end, his greatest success wasn't leaving it behind. It was using it to show the world that second acts are possible, that reinvention is real, and that sometimes the best chapters of your story are the ones you never saw coming. 50 years after Happy Days first graced television screens, Henry Winkler and Ron Howard stood together once again, side by side, under the bright lights of the 2024 Emmy Awards. It was a moment decades in the making. Fans had waited years to see the two men who had defined an era reunite, not just as former co-stars, but as friends who had weathered the highs and lows of Hollywood. To make the occasion even more special, the stage was transformed into a recreation of Arnold's Drive-In, the heart of Happy Days. The neon lights, the red booths, the classic jukebox. It was like stepping back in time. As the two men walked onto the stage, the crowd erupted in applause, a standing ovation before they had even spoken a word. Then, in a perfectly timed moment, Ron Howard joked about how other classic TV reunions had their theme songs play when they entered. Winkler, never missing a beat, turned to the jukebox, raised his fist, and pretended to hit it, just like Fonzie used to. Right on cue, the Happy Days theme began to play, sending the audience into an even louder roar of laughter and cheers. It was a moment of pure nostalgia and joy, but more than that, it was a symbol of how far they had both come, of the journey that had started on the set of a sitcom and had taken them in entirely different directions, only to bring them back together, where it all began. Despite the struggles, despite the on-set tensions, despite the battles over screen time and creative direction, Winkler and Howard had remained close. What had started as a working relationship had grown into a true friendship, one that had lasted longer than the show itself. Over the years, they had supported each other in ways the public rarely saw. When Winkler struggled to find work after Happy Days, Howard never stopped believing in him. And when Howard transitioned into directing, Winkler was one of his biggest champions. In fact, when Howard's daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, was born, there was no question. Henry Winkler was named her godfather. Winkler was there for her first school play, offering words of encouragement. He was there when she landed her first major Hollywood role. And when she got married, both Ron Howard and Henry Winkler walked her down the aisle together. A moment that spoke volumes about the bond they had built, not just as actors, but as family. Looking back on their time together, the lessons of Happy Days went far beyond television. It was a story of friendship, fame, and the cost of success. It was about how quickly things can change, and how sometimes the thing that makes you famous can also be the thing that holds you back. But it was also about perseverance, reinvention, and staying true to yourself. Henry Winkler's journey was a testament to that. He had been typecast, written off, nearly forgotten. And yet, at 72 years old, he won his first Emmy, proving that success doesn't have an expiration date. Ron Howard's story was different, but just as inspiring. He went from being a child actor to directing some of the biggest films in Hollywood, winning 2 Academy Awards, and shaping the industry in ways few ever do. But through all of it, through the struggles, the triumphs, the decades of change, one thing remained constant: their friendship. As they stood together at the Emmy Awards, celebrating 50 years of Happy Days, it was clear what they had built lasted far beyond a television show. Because in the end, Happy Days wasn't just about the 1950s or teenage adventures or jukeboxes and leather jackets. It was about family. And for Henry Winkler and Ron Howard, that's exactly what they had become. Henry Winkler and Ron Howard's journey is a testament to resilience, reinvention, and the power of friendship. Success doesn't always come easy. It can be unpredictable, fleeting, and at times even feel out of reach. But if there's one thing their story proves, it's that with perseverance, reinvention, and a belief in yourself, anything is possible. From TV superstardom to struggles behind the scenes, from career setbacks to incredible comebacks, both men found their way. Not just in Hollywood, but in life. They proved that true success isn't just about fame. It's about lasting impact. And now, we want to hear from you. What's your favorite Happy Days moment? Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind TV's greatest legends. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay cool, stay kind, and as Fonzie would say, "Aye!"